ready? Are you ready? Let's do this!
Hi, I just want to welcome everybody back to my channel. I just wanted to say thank you for the continued support. As I mentioned at the first video that I had posted, this is something very dear to me, and we're going to be speaking to several parents throughout this journey, parents that have gone through what I've gone through. I wanted to go ahead and share my story of what I went to, everything that I went through. My name is Joel Ojeda, Rev, and this is my story and my daughter Mia's story. You know, it's kind of easy when things are going well, when things are going great, for you to kind of forget about the important things in life. We take things for granted. We look at things and we just assume they're always going to be there. Well, this is my story. It was July 18th in 2015 when, as I mentioned in my video, I'm a mixed martial arts referee. I was getting ready to ref a fight, and Mia's mom and I at that point, we were still together, and she was 9 months pregnant, and I was kind of hesitant to actually go ref because she was due any minute. And sure enough, I'm in Las Cruces, New Mexico, which is about 45 minutes from where she was here in El Paso. And she called me. She goes, "Joel, I'm getting pains. I think it's time. I think Mia is on her way." And I remember telling her, "Do you want me to go over there?" She goes, "No, my mom's on her way. She's going to take me. Just take your time, finish the fights, and afterwards just come back." I remember I was so distracted in those fights. Luckily, I was actually reffing with my best friend, Joe Coca from Albuquerque. And I even told him, and he even said, "If you need to leave, leave." But I wanted to finish the night. But yeah, after every fight that I was reffing, I would call and say, "Are you okay?" And she would just kind of give me an update. That night, I drove back after the fights as soon as I could. The following morning, July 19th, at around 9 a.m., my daughter Mia Seone was born. She, 6 pounds, 11 ounces, healthy little girl. And I just remember, and I close my eyes now, and it's probably the best and most unforgettable moment that I could ever imagine, is when the nurse and the doctor got her, and they turned around and they said, "Mr. Ojeda, Daddy, congratulations, you have a beautiful baby girl." I still can close my eyes and I can still feel her. I can still smell her, holding her as a newborn. And again, that's a feeling that I'm never gonna forget. She grew up, we took her home the following day because at this point, everything seemed to be fine with all the tests. Like I said, fast forwarding a little bit, unfortunately, her mom and I, we ended up separating, but we still had custody. Both of us had joint custody of Mia. We never went through court or anything. We were actually very civil about it, and we would have her, and she would have her a couple of days, I would have her a couple of days. So that's the way it went. Mia grew up being a happy little girl, and there was times where actually her mom and I would get together. We would take Mia and her older sister, because at that point she had and she still has an older sister, and we would just take him out, you know, for ice cream or take him somewhere to the park and play. And Mia was just a very happy little girl. Actually, she was a little bully. I remember we would get reports from from her daycare saying, you know, Mia pushed a little girl, Mia pushed a little boy, Mia took somebody's cookies. And she was just a happy little girl, very happy little girl. I can still remember picking her up from daycare and her just running up to me and saying, "Daddy, you know, I love you." And of course, my beard was longer. She would pull on my beard and just kiss me and say, "I love you, Daddy." When she turned 2 years old, I remember that her mom had actually texted me on several occasions and said, "Hey, have you noticed anything with Mia? And at night, she's complaining about belly pain." She had even told me, "What are you feeding her? You always take her to McDonald's, or you always feed her fast food," of course, playing around. And I just remember saying, "No, well, she complained a little bit about her belly, but it was Nothing too much, nothing that I thought was bad or severe. And she said, no, with me, she cries a lot, and she says that her belly hurts. We didn't think much of it. We did take her to her pediatrician, which they told us that it was constipation. So they gave us Miralax to try and help her release a little bit of what she had inside. That didn't seem to work. She was still having some belly pain. And I remember one day we just said, you know what, we need to take her to the emergency room. We need to take her to the ER. Something doesn't seem right. The daycare had called us actually uh, 2 days and said, hey, you know what, Mia is really not herself. She's usually bullying kids. She's usually running around, but she just is laying down. She doesn't really want to play. She's not in the mood to do a lot of things. So we decided to take her to the emergency room, and when we took her here to one of the local hospitals, they told us the same thing. No, it's constipation. At that point, something didn't seem right. And that is when the mom said, what if we can we get an x-ray, please? We just need to see a little bit more. We just need to be sure. We know our daughter. We know that it's not just constipation, that there's something else there. So they went ahead and they did an x-ray. And we took her, it must have been about 11 p.m., excuse me, around 1 a.m. The doctor comes in, and Mia was asleep there in the emergency room. And she says, Mom and Dad, can you come with me? I want to show you something. One of the nurses stayed with Mia as she was asleep. And the doctor pulled us aside to a laptop that he had open, a computer that he had open. And he showed us the x-ray. He said, you know what, there is a little mass here. I can't really explain what it is. All I know is that it's a mass. Unfortunately, we don't have things for children here, so we're gonna have to transfer you to the children's hospital so they can further evaluate her. We figured, okay, we'll go home, we'll sleep, take her in the morning. But this is what kind of made us aware that it was something more serious. That's when they told us, no, she has to go by ambulance right now. At that point, we were not fully aware of what was going on. I remember walking out of the hospital. I called my parents and I called her mom's parents too. So I called both sets of grandparents and I said, you know, they're telling us that she has a mass kind of around the liver area, and they're going to send us to the children's hospital. And they did. It was around 2 in the morning that her mom and her were transferred by ambulance to the children's hospital here locally. And again, because of some legally, I cannot say certain names or certain people, but we were transferred to the local children's hospital here. It was around 3 in the morning when we got there. The following morning, or when we got there rather, the doctor said the following morning we're going to have to run a couple of more tests. We're going to have to do a whole body, screening, a whole body MRI. We just want to make sure that we catch everything. The following morning around 8 or 9 a.m. when visitors were allowed, I remember my parents and her other grandparents showing up. At this point, Mia had gone back and they told us it's going to be about 2 to 3 hours for all the testing to be done. So we waited there. At this point, we were still not aware of the severity of things. We were not sure of how serious all this was. And around noon, they called us and they said, Mom, Dad, Mia's out of surgery. She's in recovery. And you guys are going to be transferred to the general floor. And from there, the doctor will go and speak to you, Al. So we went. It must have been around 1 o'clock. Mia woke up hungry. She ate a little bit and then she napped. And it was around 3 p.m. and this was in September. This was in September of 2017. I still remember it was September 8th of 2017. When the doctor comes in, both our parents were in the waiting area. Only Mom and myself were there. Mia was asleep. She was taking a nap after she ate. And I remember hearing the sliding door open. Mia's mom was laying with her in the bed. I was in the little sofa. And I remember hearing the sliding door open, the doctor walking in. And we knew something was wrong because he couldn't look at us in the eyes. He just said, "Mom, can you come here? We need to talk." So as we're both sitting down in the sofa, as Mia's asleep in the bed, the doctor looks at us and says, told us the worst news that probably any parent can get. And he said, "Mom, Dad, the little mass that the doctor saw yesterday is actually not that little. It's wrapped around her belly, and it's pretty big." And he told us, "Mia has cancer." I can still hear those words right now. Mia has cancer. Out of the corner of my eye, I see her mom just put her head down and start crying. And my first instinct, I just got up and I said, "This can't be happening." I told myself. But see, prior to this, as I had mentioned, I've been a youth pastor and a youth minister. And I remember before Mia was diagnosed, I had told God, "God, I'm ready to start preaching again. I'm ready to start going and for you to take me to where I once was. I want to preach the word. I have my daughter looking at me. I want to be a good example for her." And I remember her godmother, Pastor Tanya, tell me, "Joel, before God uses you, you're going to go through something difficult." And I remember just saying that day, "God, whatever you bring my way, whatever you want to send me, I'm going to stand firm and I'm going to keep my faith and I'm going to preach your word. And I'm going to still preach about all the miracles that you do," not knowing that I was going to go through this. When that was brought to me, when that was told to me by Pastor Tanya, 2 weeks later, Mia was diagnosed. And I remember that day that Tanya talked to me, I remember telling God, "Whatever you bring my way, I'm going to be faithful to you." When that doctor told us Mia has cancer, I got up and I started walking. I walked out of the room. I remember I grabbed her little sandal that we had taken her to the hospital with. And I grabbed it and I walked out the door and I started walking down the hallway. And to me, right now that I think about it, it seems to me like I was floating down the hallway. I could see out of the sides. I could see out of my peripherals. I could see that nurses were looking at me because they knew, obviously, the diagnosis. And they were looking at me. And as I'm walking, all I could see is them stare at me. And very far away, I heard, "Mr. Ojeda, do you need anything?" But at that point, I was just floating down the hallway. I don't even have recollection of me taking steps. I go to the end of the hall, and there's a big window there in the corner. And I remember looking out. In the corner of Reynolds and Alameda Street. And I looked down, and I looked at her sandal. And I remember I just started crying like I had never cried before. And all I could hear in my head was the doctor over and over, "Mia has cancer. Mia has cancer. Mia has cancer." I fell down to my knees and I started crying. But there I heard a voice tell me, "Remember, Joel, you said that no matter what, you were still going to be faithful." When I walked back into the room, when I finally composed myself and walked back into the room, her mom is with her, holding her, crying, obviously. She looks at me and she goes, Joel, I'm scared. What's going to happen? Trying to be strong for her, but yet I'm torn inside. I remember telling her, I remember holding her hand and I said, no matter what, we're going to fight with her. No matter what, we're going to be here. We're her parents and we got to defend her. We got to be her voice. The doctor had come in and told us this is what's going to happen. This was on a Friday. He said she'll have the weekend to relax, and starting Monday, we're going to start a PICC line because she needs to start chemo right away. This tumor is bigger than what we think, than what we thought, so she has to start chemo. I still remember I called my friend from work, Delisa. I called my bosses who are also very good friends of mine, and I told them what had happened. They were all in unbelief. This is a little girl that I had taken to the company summer parties, a little girl that I would post pictures of and videos of her just running around like if nothing was happening. But now there's this little girl diagnosed with cancer. Now there's this little girl who's going to be fighting for her life. I remember telling her mom, our parents are waiting downstairs for the results. I'm going to call them and have them come up. I called them. All four of them show up in the room. And as soon as they walk in, they knew something was wrong. As soon as they saw us, being parents, being my parents, being her mom, Surasi's parents, they knew something was wrong with their children. They closed the door behind them. I remember Mia's mom didn't even want to look up. She didn't even want to look at her parents. She was just holding Mia. And I remember them asking me what happened. What did they tell you? And I told them exactly. They told us Mia has cancer and it's aggressive and it's growing. I remember my mom and her mom started crying. My dad just turned his face around and walked away. And Mia's other grandfather, Carlos, I remember he started crying. And then I remember him coming up to me and Mia's mom. And he told us in Spanish, and I'm never going to forget these words. He told us, no nos vamos a rajar. No nos vamos a rajar. We're not going to give up. We're going to fight with this little girl. Every step of the way, we're going to fight with her and be with her every step of the way. At this point, we couldn't call anyone else. Our parents had to make the call. Obviously, Mia's uncles and aunts, my brother's sister, Surasi's sister, everybody was made aware. And the news spread like wildfire. Her mom and I were blessed to have a big following on social media because we're both part of the martial arts world. So I had people reach out to me from all over. As I also mentioned, I'm part of a worldwide brotherhood of bearded men. And I remember calling my West Texas captain, Daryl, and I said, Daryl, brother, they diagnosed my daughter with cancer. And I remember him telling the brotherhood, and all the brothers started calling me. My family started calling me. At this point, we did not want to get any phone calls. We did not want to talk to anybody. I remember pulling Mia's mom aside and I said, all right, it's Friday. She's going to start treatment on Monday. I told her we have 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, to cry as much as we need to. We have 2 days to cry and to throw ourselves and to just yell if we have to, because come Monday, we have to be strong for her. Come Monday, it's going to be all about her. At this point, whatever differences her and her mom had, whatever differences her mom and I had, we put them aside. At that point, it was just all about Mia. And from that point on, it was just a very difficult time. The doctor finally came in on Monday. They started uh, uh, some lines. They wanted to put a port in her, but they said that her veins were too small, that they couldn't put a port. So they were going to put what's called a PICC line to get the medication in through there. Again, these are all things that are going to be in detail in the book. But right now, legally, I cannot speak of them or even mention certain things or people or places by name. But I remember her first round of chemo. And they gave us the roadmap. They said she's going to have approximately about 7 or 8 rounds of chemo. Somewhere between the 3rd and 4th round, you guys are going to have to leave El Paso. We don't know where yet, but she's going to have her bone marrow harvested. And we don't do that here in El Paso. So sometime between the 3rd and 4th round, that's going to happen. You guys are going to come back, finish chemo. And maybe after the 7th or 8th round, then the tumor will shrink down small enough to where our doctor can go in and try and take it out. They had told us it was stage 3, but they didn't tell us what type of cancer it was. Again, this will be in detail later on. There was a misdiagnosis and a misstaged. They started her off with a chemo that she shouldn't have started off with. But needless to say, after the 2nd round, one of the hardest things also that I've had to do is my daughter had her beautiful hair. And I guess at this point I was still in denial that she had cancer. I didn't want to believe it. But one of the times after they give her a bath, I remember me being there with her mom, and as we're brushing her hair, as I brush the back of her hair, I look down in my hand and there's a clump of hair in my hand. Her hair was starting to fall off. And that's when reality slapped me in the face again and said, your daughter has cancer. We met some great nurses that I'm never gonna forget. Throughout the bat, there were still good and good people. Cynthia, who my daughter called Nini because she couldn't pronounce Cindy or Cynthia, she was there. And Mia was a feisty little girl. She was. Joelle was there. Gary, Christian, Gavi, and Emily, who surprisingly enough is my sister-in-law now. But these are people that we met through the process. People that got to know Mia and got to love Mia. After the 2nd round, we decided to have what we call the shave party. Since Mia was losing her hair, we wanted to make something fun out of it. So I got my barber, Carlos, who's also one of my bearded brothers. And he took all these things to the hospital. And there, both my brothers, her mom, and myself, we shaved our head in front of Mia so she could see how fun it was to lose our hair. And then it was her turn. And my brother Carlos cut her hair, shaved it off. But she was happy because she had hair like mommy and like daddy and like her tíos. She didn't know the difference. She thought we were having a party. She thought it was fun. After the second round of chemo, her PICC line started failing. It was an emergency that she had to be taken into surgery. Something bad happened. Some malpractice was involved. She was over-sedated. And she ended up coding right before going into surgery. And I just remember being in the pre-op area. And as I sedate her, I see her sats start dropping. Now, mind you, I've been working in an operating room for 18 years. I know what this is. She stopped breathing. She started dropping, her sats started dropping 80, 70, 60, and it was going fast. I remember her mom looking at the monitor, looking at me and saying, "What's happening?" Again, I knew exactly what was happening, but I didn't want to scare her. I wanted to be strong. And I just remembered inside of me saying, "I'm not losing my daughter today. I'm not losing my daughter right now." And all of a sudden I heard her yell. That was a sigh of relief for me because I knew that she had enough oxygen and she was breathing enough to yell. Unfortunately, because of that, she had to be intubated for 5 days. And those 5 days were pretty bad. She was intubated. And they told us that that was going to help her get stronger, that was helping her rest. The doctor sat down next to me, the anesthesiologist, and said, "Well, Joel, these things, blah, 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 these things happen." I said, "No, they don't. You don't understand. I do this for a living too. Whatever happened here was wrong. Protocol was wrong. Things that were supposed to be legally where they need to be were not there." And I told him, I said, "So do me a favor and just get away from me. Get out of here because I'm afraid I'm going to do something." She was intubated for 5 days, and in those 5 days, this was in October in 2017, we didn't know if she was going to wake up. We didn't know if she was going to come out of being intubated or not. Well, she did after the 5th day. And she came out hungry. And she was hungry. But what was interesting is at this point, something had changed. Something was different. The look in my daughter's eye, the look in our daughter's eye was different. She had a different glow. She had a different look. She had a different stare. I remember my administrator at the time, Mrs. Masha Elman, who's also my boss's mom, came in to visit her. She met her as a baby, but she didn't know her, grown up. And she started having a conversation with my daughter. And Mia started telling her about angels. Started talking to her about angels. Started telling her that there were angels there in the room. She even looked up and started pointing them out. I remember I looked at Mrs. Masha and she was speechless. She didn't know what to say. She had to get up and walk out of the room. And it was then that at night, when we were trying to go to sleep, we would hear her mumble and talking. And when her mom and I would approach her and ask, she would say, "I'm talking with the angels." And I knew at that point there was a divine connection. Throughout this whole time, something happened in those 5 days. And another interesting thing that happened is she woke up at her 2 years old. She was going to daycare, so she knew her numbers. She knew a lot of things. But to the best of our knowledge as parents, she didn't know the days of the week. But she woke up asking us, "Mommy, Daddy, when is Thursday?" And it was weird to us because she had never asked us that. If it was a Monday, we would tell our baby it's in 4 days. When it was actually Thursday, we would say, "Baby, it's Thursday," and she would just look around and say, okay. Well, after the third round of chemo, they came in and they said, you know what, we found a hospital in Fort Worth, I'm sorry. But this hospital, this is what her oncologist here locally told us. This hospital, they don't do anything but bone marrow transplant. Because we asked, are they going to do any other treatment? Oh no, they're just going to do the bone marrow harvesting and you guys are going to come right back and continue treatments here. We said, okay. I remember when we left, it was in November. We were going to be over there about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. And it was going to be right deadline with Thanksgiving. We were going to a city that we didn't know. We were going to a city where we didn't have any family. I had 2 friends over there. One friend, Sherry, and her husband, Edward. Sherry was actually one of my nurse managers when I started working first here. And then my friend Edgar and his wife Maribel, Edgar and I had grown up. We knew each other since middle school. Those are the only 2 people that I knew were there. So I remember leaving over there, and Mia and her mom were going to go through air ambulance. So I left the day before. And again, I just want to thank my brotherhood, because once I got over there, the North Texas villains and the bearded villains of Dallas, they picked me up, took me to dinner, and they made me feel at home when they picked me up over there. We have chapters all over the world, and my brothers from North Texas and Dallas, they did so much for my daughter and I and her mom that I'm never, ever going to forget. So thank you, brothers, so much. So we end up in Fort Worth. And as soon as we get there, the very first nurse we meet, Micah. Oh, Micah. My daughter loved you so much too. Here's this feisty little girl from El Paso being flown in. And Micah was the first nurse to receive us there. I remember she went above and beyond for treatment. We were at the hospital, at the children's hospital there in Fort Worth. And we had a doctor come in, and she introduced herself. And she said, I'm Dr. So-and-so. Can I look at your daughter's chart? She looked it over. And she goes, your daughter has neuroblastoma. You're aware of that, right? So we said, well, we were never given a definite, but they told us it was stage 3 and it could possibly be neuroblastoma. She said, can I ask you all for a favor? Can I do scans on her again? And we said, yes. She told us who she was. She goes, I am one of the busiest neuroblastoma specialists in the world, not just the United States. And we said, well, back in her hometown, they told us that this hospital only did bone marrow. And just with a frustrated, kind of upset look in her face, she said, no, we don't. Again, we do a lot of neuroblastoma here, and I'm one of the best neuroblastoma specialists in the world. So they did the scan. When we got the results, it was another shock. She said, Mom, Dad, well, I have something to tell you. That tumor that was growing around the belly, oh, it's there. It's big and it's aggressive. But there's another tumor that they missed. And this tumor is running up her spine, and it's wrapped around her heart. She's got 2 tumors, and they're both growing fast. She looked through her notes, and with tears in her eyes, she said, I'm sorry. She was started off with chemo she shouldn't have started off with. Let me take care of her. Do me a favor and please do not go back home. Let me take care of her from now on. We were in shock because at our local hospital, they didn't know about this hospital and what they did in Fort Worth. I remember her mom and I were so upset. And we said, yes, please. Whatever's going to give our daughter a better chance of living, we'll do it. We'll do whatever we need to. I remember again calling work and said, I'm not going to go back. My boss, Dr. Elman and Dr. La Torre, said, don't worry about work. Just stay over there. Stay with your daughter. Do what you got to do. So we ended up staying for 2 more rounds of chemo in Fort Worth. I remember she finished her 4th round right before Thanksgiving. And we wanted to come home, of course, for Thanksgiving and be with our families. But the doctor said, I would rather not. I would rather keep her here another week. In December, you guys can probably go back for 2 weeks, but then I'm going to need you guys right back. So we did. Thanksgiving of 2017, we spent Thanksgiving in Fort Worth. And it was just us 3. Mommy, Daddy, and Mia. But we had a good dinner. My friend Sherry cooked up a meal, went to the hospital and took it with us. Took the food to us, so we had a good dinner. We were still at the hospital. We were supposed to stay at the Ronald McDonald House, but she was inpatient the whole time. That they said, go to El Paso. When you come back, you'll be able to stay at the Ronald McDonald House. So we did. In December, we came back for 2 weeks to spend at least part of the holidays. We did spend Christmas and New Year's here. In early January, we actually ended up heading back to Fort Worth. At this point, we did stay at the Ronald McDonald House. And once we went there, the people there, they were just so amazing. You know, Lori, Tanya, Stephanie, everybody there at the Ronald McDonald House was just a blessing. Mac, who was the house dog, a Labradoodle that my daughter Mia fell in love with. That was who housed us. That's where we were. And we were blessed that the Ronald McDonald House was literally across the street from the hospital. So once we got over there, they told us, okay, there's a new roadmap. We're going to do a couple of more chemos. We're going to definitely have to do radiation. And then we'll see what we do by then. We can't promise you anything else because her tumor's too far, too big, too advanced for us to even try or to not even promise you, but tell you we're going to do everything that we can in our power to help her. I remember those times were tough. After about another 2 rounds of chemo, they told us we're going to go ahead and go in, and the tumor is now small enough to where we can try and resect it. It's going to be a big surgery. It's going to be a long surgery. And quite honestly, there's a big possibility she might not wake up from the surgery. So I remember preparing everybody. I remember talking to the pastors. The pastors would pray with me. March 8th, she had her first surgery in the belly. It was a 9-hour surgery where they cut her from one side of her ribs to the other. Those 9 hours, I remember we were there in the waiting room, and one of my bearded brothers from North Texas, Eugene, he stayed with me the whole time. They come out and they said, we're finished with this part of the surgery, but we're going to leave her intubated because tomorrow the cardiologist comes in and they're going to do the second tumor, which is in the heart. So they kept her intubated. The following morning, went right back into surgery for another 6 hours. The doctor came out and they said, we removed as much as we could, and I think we got it all. That night it was kind of difficult, and again, the nurses over there were great that night. And for the first couple of nights, we had Madison as our nurse, another nurse who went above and beyond to make us feel a little bit more comfortable. We ended up going to the CICU, but that same night, Mia started getting a seizure. And I remember when they took her back and they helped her out through the seizure, that was another difficult time for us. That was difficult because, again, we didn't know what the next day was going to bring. We were back in ICU. One of the clips that they had put when they removed the tumor had come loose, and she started bleeding internally again. Luckily, the bleeding stopped, and we were out of ICU, and after a couple of weeks, maybe, we were back on the regular floor. Again, going back and forth to the Ronald McDonald House, and the times that she was not being treated, boy, did we have a lot of fun. We must have visited every mall in Fort Worth and Dallas. We would go to the surrounding areas. We would go to cookouts, with the Bearded Villains there in North Texas. We would go to the zoo, and Mia would just be happy. People that would see her, they couldn't tell that she had what she was going through, because by the time they did the second scans there in Fort Worth, they told us, Mia, stage 4, high risk neuroblastoma. And if you know about cancer, you know stage 4 is pretty bad. But here's this little 2-year-old running around that people thought, and she did, she had a smile throughout it all. But there was nights of difficult, that she was in pain, that her mom and I couldn't sleep. We didn't sleep for days. All we would do is look at the monitor, make sure that she was breathing, make sure that she was not in pain, make sure that she was okay. What I did a lot of the times, my mom would tell me, how is Mia doing? And I would tell her she would be doing okay. What I would do is, when Mia was having an okay day, I would actually take pictures of her in different outfits. And every time my mom would ask me, and if Mia was doing bad, I would just send her a picture with a different outfit and say, look, she's having fun. Both my parents and her mom's parents, they would go to Fort Worth quite often, maybe every couple of days, and they would spend time over there with us. And Mia was happy. She had mommy and daddy, and she had both grandparents in at the same time. That's when she started radiation. And she went through 24 sessions of radiation. They told us, Mom, Dad, we're trying everything we can. Even after the tumor was taken out, we're trying everything we can, but this tumor keeps coming back. We keep giving her what we think is going to work, but it's not working. But we're trying. That's what they would tell us. We're trying. Throughout this time, I know we would have difficult times, but throughout this whole process, I remember I never once questioned God. But rather I said, God, thank you, because you chose us. For what purpose? I don't know. You chose Mia, you chose her mom, you chose me. For what purpose? I don't know what the purpose is. But you chose us, so I thank you. I remember one night Mia was so much in pain, and Mom is holding her. And I remember I was praying and I was telling God, thank you. One of the nurses walks in and walks back out. And when I walk out, she's crying and she tells me, Joel, I'm sorry, but how can you say thank you, God, with your daughter going through what she's going through? And I told her, I go, because I know that her soul's not being touched. I know she's not in pain. And I know that if she's going through this, it's because there's a higher purpose that we do not understand. She didn't understand either. So throughout this whole process, all I would say is thank you, God, for choosing us. But everything that they were trying, nothing was working. Throughout this whole process, again, Mia would keep seeing angels. She would talk to angels. She would be talking and mumbling at night, saying she would talk to angels. I remember at one point we went to a wax museum there in Fort Worth, and there's a wax figures of Jesus when he was born and when he was preaching, when he was crucified, when he walked out. And one of the times we're walking and my mom is holding her in her arms. And when she sees the wax figure of Jesus walking, she stops cold in her tracks. And she tells us all, look, it's Jesus. I know him. I've seen him. And she starts waving frantically at this wax figure of Jesus. And she's looking kind of confused, saying, he's not waving back. But then again, right there, we knew something had happened. Throughout this whole time, she would tell us, when is Thursday? When is Thursday? We did not know why she was asking that. And all of a sudden, her favorite numbers were 5 and 3, 5 and 3. If you look at pictures, she's saying 3 or she's saying 5. All the time she would say 3 this or 5. I want to eat 5 burgers. I want to eat 5 this. I want 3 this. I want 5 of that. And we didn't know. We didn't know why 3 and 5 and why Thursday. Well, May 27th, it was difficult. And the doctor came in and the doctor told us, guys, I'm sorry, but everything we're trying, nothing's working. That day in May, they told us, Mia has about 2 days to live. That's it. I remember getting on the phone, calling our parents. And that morning I called my best friend too, my best friend Joe in Albuquerque. I must have called him like at 10 a.m. and at 2 p.m. he was in Fort Worth. Thank you, brother. That means a lot. And they told us she has 2 days to live. You're going to see how her sats are going to start dropping until she can't breathe anymore. I remember that day when our parents finally got there. That night, I took her mom and we went into a room while our parents were taking care of Mia. And I remember sitting down with her mom and I told her, Surasi, I said, it's time. We're going to have to right now say the most difficult prayer that we have ever said. It's time for us to return our daughter back. She was crying and she just nodded her head. And I remember that day in the room. That night in the room saying, God, this is it. It's time. We still don't know why you've chosen us, but you did. But it's time for us to give you your daughter back. She was never our daughter. You lent her to us. And if it's time for you to take her back, then we want to thank you for these 2 years of life that you gave us with her. As a parent, that is the most difficult prayer you're ever going to have to pray. Those are the most difficult words that are going to come out of your mouth when you say, if you need to take your son or daughter back, here it is. As her mom says, we can't play tug of war with God. We can't. We're going to lose every single time. So at this point, we give up. We know where she's going. So right now, we're not praying for her anymore because she's going to a perfect place. But right now, I ask for you to give her mom, myself, her older sister, and her grandparents strength. That is our prayer right now, is for strength. For strength, for us to accept what's about to happen. For us to know that it's in your perfect will. And if it's time, then we want to say thank you, God. We walked back into the room And all of a sudden, her stats started coming up. She started breathing normally. She wakes up and she says, I'm hungry. When they told us she had 2 days to live, 2 days later, we were being discharged from the hospital. And now that I see it, the purpose for that was the following. Her mom and I had obviously some issues. And if Mia would have left right there and then, I think the issues would have continued, if not would have been worse. But God gave us the opportunity to kind of mend things and talk about things and put things aside. This happened in May 28th, 29th, those 2 days. Well, in June, they still told us we're trying everything we can, but nothing's working. I remember the doctor, the oncologist that was on call that day, one of the times that she was inpatient. Every time we would ask a doctor, every time we would ask them, is she terminal? That word terminal. They didn't want to answer us. They would say, well, we're trying this, we're trying that. And we would just kind of leave it. Well, one day, this doctor, this oncology doctor that was covering that weekend, as he's sitting down, I went and I looked at him in the eyes and said, Doctor, is she terminal? And he started replying as they always did. Well, we're trying. At that point, I stopped him and I said, Doctor, stop. Please stop. Are you a father? Yes, I am. I have 2 kids. Would you want for somebody to tell you straight out if something was wrong with one of your kids? And he said, yes. And I said, well, doctor, I ask you again, is she terminal? And he gave me a response that I'm never going to forget. He responded in a way that I wasn't ready. And his response actually helped me to write a book, the next book that's coming out. It inspired me to write that book because he tells me, Joel, you're asking me if she's terminal? Well, I'm going to answer you, yes, she is. But guess what? So are you. So am I. So is mom. So is the nurse. So is everybody in this room. We are all terminal. Just some of us are going to finish the race sooner than others. Wow, that hit me. That hit me. And I knew right there and then, I said, when God knows that we're done in this earth doing what we need to do, He's going to call us home. Maybe my daughter already finished what she needed to do. At 2 years old, at the hospital and in the Ronald McDonald House, on her own, she would go in and lay hands on other sick children. And she did that to about 6 or 7 children. And at least in 4 of those cases, the parents called me back and they said, Joel, my son or my daughter, they're healed. After me, I laid hands on them and prayed for them. We went back and they're healed. At that point, I was saying, God, Mia has a ministry, a powerful ministry and a testimony, and she's not even aware of it. In June, which was in my birthday, they told us that they didn't know how much longer she had to live. So we asked her specifically, because when we got over there, the very first place she wanted to go was Chuck E. Cheese. We found a Chuck E. Cheese that was about 5 minutes from the Ronald McDonald House. And those people there treated us so good, to the point that the general manager, Chelsea, the employees there, Rafa, they were so nice to us. They would comp me out everything. Mia could go into that Chuck E. Cheese and she did whatever she wanted there. I remember she would finish her radiation And we would go there, and she would be running around with bandages in her hands. And all the employees would just look at him. And I had one employee to tell me, Joel, wow, the way I see your daughter running around here at Chuck E. Cheese like nothing's wrong, it's made me change my life. It's made me change the way I see my kids, the way I treat my kids. I would be here hours telling you all the messages that I would get or that her mom would get. I had an officer who's in Houston right now tell me the same thing, Joel. Wow, your daughter just completely changed the type of man I am, the type of father that I am. And that is just the charisma that Mia had. She told us very specific. She says, for her 3rd birthday, I want to have a party at Chuck E. Cheese, and I want it of Minnie Mouse. We were in Fort Worth. Both her grandparents were there, and we had that party late June. Her birthday was July 19th, but the reason we didn't have it then is because we didn't know how much longer she had. That day she had so much fun. That day she was running around. That day she went to the front and she danced with Chucky for her birthday. That day we sang her happy birthday. That was the first birthday she had when both families were together. Mom, dad, both grandparents, her older sister that she loved. We were all there. And we had fun. July 2nd of 2018. She started complaining about a little bit of belly pain. It wasn't much. There had been other occasions where she had belly pain that would really hurt her. But this time we decided to take her in. We didn't know that would be the last time that we took her into the hospital. I remember she told us she was tired. She was sleeping. 4th of July, I remember we were seeing the fireworks from outside her window. She was asleep. And the night before, July 3rd, her mom and I had a weird, similar experience. I told her I'm going to go outside and walk the following day, 4th of July in the morning. Both my parents were going to show up. I remember I walked out of the hospital, and as I'm walking through the back alley, I had a vision. And in this vision, I'm standing in a pulpit, in a stage, and I'm preaching. And I just see crowds of people. But something happens when I'm looking from the back to the front. As I look to the front, I see a casket. And I see Mia lying in that casket. I remember I stopped and I said, no, this can't be it. This must not be from God. How can I be getting a vision from God preaching at my daughter's funeral? And the mom had just taken a nap and she woke up scared and she goes, Joel, had a dream. She actually had the exact same dream of me preaching in Mia's funeral. The following day, 4th of July, my parents get there. By this time, Mia, she's out. She's on continuous morphine. And that night after the fireworks, my parents went to stay at the Ronald McDonald House. Mia's mom was with her in the bed, and I walked outside to walk again outside in the alley behind the hospital. And it was right there and then that I had a talk with God. And I said, all right, God, I know the time's approaching. I know the time's coming. And I know, like I told you before, I know exactly where she's going. But I don't know how you're gonna let me know that she's fine. I don't know how it's gonna happen, but something, I know where she's going and I know she's gonna be fine, but you have to tell me, you have to show me that she's gonna be fine. I walked inside and she was, like I said, unresponsive at that point, connected to morphine. Well, she sits up, literally sits up. And her mom is there and I'm there. And she looks at me and 3 times, 3, remember 5 and 3, she repeated to me 3 times, Daddy, I am healed. Daddy, I am healed. And the 3rd time, Daddy, I am healed. She went back to sleep. The next morning, Mia's mom called her parents and told them that they needed to get there as soon as possible because we would just see her oxygen levels dropping. So they got on the first flight and they went to Dallas. By this time, Mia was not doing well. But even then, I remember my mom being in a corner of a room. Mia's mom is pacing back and forth. And Mia sits up again. And she looks at my mom and she tells her, don't cry. Be strong. Mia's mom looks at her and she goes, Mia, open your eyes, because she just had this glazed look. Mia, open your eyes. Look at me, baby. Look at me. Open your eyes. Please tell me something. Mia looks at her and she says, Mommy, the angels are here. They're here already. I'm okay. At this point, the doctors come in and they said, she doesn't have much time. Mommy, Daddy, hold her, carry her. They had put her into oxygen. They put up the oxygen as high as they could. She wasn't getting enough oxygen anymore. My little sister was there. My little sister was there when she was born, and she was there when she passed. I remember Mia opening her eyes a little bit, looking at her and just waving, saying bye. And I remember Mia's mom holding her and she was telling her, baby, just hold on a little bit more. Abu and Abwe, which are her parents, it's what she would call her grandma and grandpa, they're on their way, baby, just please stay a little bit more. And as her sats would drop into the 40s, 30s, whenever her mom would tell her, baby, just wait a little bit longer, they would come back up, come back up. The parents show up around 2:55 in the afternoon. Her mom and her dad run into the room. And as the mom is standing up against the wall trying not to fall, I remember Mia's grandpa, Surasi's dad, look at Mia and say, Mia, just do me a favor. In Spanish, le dijo, mija, tell God that I love him and tell him that I said thank you. Mia opened her eyes. She nodded her head yes. She looked around the room at all of us. 5 and 3, July 5th, at exactly 3 p.m., she gave her last breath in Mommy's arms as I'm holding her feet. I remember getting up from the bed. I remember punching the wall, throwing the computer, and all of a sudden I collapsed. I knew it was coming, but it still hit me to have felt your own daughter's last breath. It hit me. Right before she left, her mom told her, it's okay, baby. You can let go. We know you're tired. We know you're tired, baby. We know that you're hurting. So it's okay to let go. And she did at 3 p.m. The doctor turned off the monitor. And the doctor told us, Mom, Dad, you fought with her. And you should always be proud of that. The chaplain was there. There was other people there. And they instructed us. They said the body could only be here for about another 2 hours. And then we're going to have to ask you to leave. I remember both grandmas gave her her last bath. They changed her. And her mom and I walked into the room because they told us, you're going to have to leave. It's time to say bye. Everybody was waiting in the waiting area downstairs. And I remember taking her mom by the hand. We closed the door behind us. And we both laid down next to her in the bed. We told her how proud we were of her. We told her how proud we were of how of how hard she had fought. We told her to tell God, thank you for allowing us to hold her for that time. We kissed her. We put a movie on for her, and we walked away. I remember going back to the Ronald McDonald house, and the hardest thing was to see her clothes, was to see her toys, her medication. We had to pack up. We had to come back home. How? How can you leave a place knowing that your daughter's body is still there? Her soul's not there because she's rejoicing in heaven. But how? 3 of us went into Fort Worth. How is it that only 2 are coming back? That's not fair.
The following day, I was numb. I was completely numb to everything. Her mom ended up in the hospital because of the shock. And I remember the following day, we both drove back. We came back separate because I was with my parents and she was with her parents. And I remember driving. I was driving. And when we hit the outside of Fort Worth, driving back to El Paso, I remember looking back. And my mom and my sister were in the back. And I lost it. Because I was used to driving around Fort Worth looking back, and I was in the back seat. But she wasn't this time. And I stopped and I pulled over and I got out and I started yelling and I started crying. I remember my parents got off and they said, "It's okay." I'm like, "No, we can't leave her here." They said, "It's okay." We came back and the following days were extremely hard. When we should be going to the store and buying clothes and buying school supplies perhaps, or buying something, we were at the funeral home picking out a casket. We were picking out what she was going to wear to be buried in. No parent should ever experience that. No parent should ever experience having to go buy a coffin for your child. Mia's godparents, Tanya and Isaac, they helped out so much. They're the ones that prepared everything. Throughout this whole thing, I decided to make Mia's story public and social media so people could see what these kids go through. When we came back to the funeral home, they told us, "We apologize, but you can't have the funeral here. We've been following Mia's story on the news and on social media, and we know that she's going to have a lot of visitors." But by this time, we had Puerta del Cielo who opened their doors at us, and we decided to have her celebration party there. No, it wasn't a funeral, it was a celebration of life. I didn't want people in black, I didn't want people in dark colors. I had people come in pink and purple because those were our favorite colors. We never expected the kind of love that we were shown love, but not to that point. We didn't expect it. We literally had hundreds of people show up to her service, to the point that they had to turn back people. There was a lot of people that went, a lot of people that showed their support, through everything. You see, throughout all of this, we saw God's hand. We were praying for a miracle, and we were praying for healing, and we got it. There was a miracle in action, MIA Mia. The miracle was that people got to see this part of it, that Mia would go and pray for kids and they were healed. And there was healing, because she told me not once but 3 times that she was healed. So there was a miracle and there was healing. Maybe not in the way that we wanted it to be, but there was. It's been difficult. It's been 2 years. And by the time we upload this video, it'll be Mia's 5th birthday. It's been rough, to the point that year that she left in July, in December, I thought going to the cemetery with a bottle of pills was going to take care of things. And it didn't. I'm still here. It's difficult and it's hard, but I made a promise to God, and I told him I was going to continue preaching, and I was going to continue to speak about faith and healing no matter what happened. And it's difficult. And sometimes it may even be hypocritical, because the people closest to me, which is my immediate family and my people from work, my friends, my coworkers from work, they see how bad I get. They see when I tell them that I'm tired, that I don't want to do anything, that I would rather not be here. But I'm sitting here talking to you about faith and about God and about love. Yeah, it might even be hypocritical, but I'm human. No one's going to tell me how I should grieve. I have good days and I have bad days, but one thing that I have learned is that it's okay to not be okay. If you look back at the Bible, God uses people that were not okay. God uses these things for a powerful testimony so people can hear about Him. And you might be thinking, and I've heard it when people tell me, I hate God. I hate Him because of what my daughter or my son's going through. I understand what you're going through because I felt anger in my heart as well. That first year when everybody was shopping back to school, I was at Walmart and they had to go get me because I panicked. I looked around and I started seeing kids with their parents. Where was my daughter? Where is she? I should be buying her clothes. But she's not here. I have a very difficult time. I've battled with depression. I was put on antidepressants. I've been put on medication. I've talked to psychiatrists. I've talked to psychologists. But this is me. This is how it is. This is what God wanted me to go through. And I could look you in the eye right now and tell you that God does exist, that there is hope, and you gotta have faith. You might not want to hear it. Trust me, when I first started this, one of my friends and my boss, Dr. La Torre, told me, Joel, I'm gonna give you some advice. Just spend as much time as you can with your daughter. At that point, I didn't want to hear that. I was pretty much saying, he was insinuating that she was gonna die at that point. I had a lot of people give me, advice that I didn't want to hear. But now it makes sense. All of it makes sense. It's hard to wake up in the morning. It's hard to go to sleep. It's hard to go throughout the day. And my coworkers know how I can be. I can be fine 1 minute and the very next minute I lose it. I can go from 0 to 100 quickly. And they're the ones that have probably experienced it the most. So I apologize to my coworkers, but I know you all love me and do it because you love me and I love you guys. My family, Mia's mom, Surasi, and her family, her older sister. God has blessed Mia's mom with another child. So Mia's a big sister now. Not only is she a little sister, she's a big sister now. And I pray for healing and I pray for everything to be okay there. So I just wanted to share this story with you. And I just wanted to be a voice for these children. Do you know that only 4% of the funding actually goes to childhood cancer? Only 4%. I think our children deserve more than that. You're going to be hearing in these next couple of weeks and months stories of parents that have gone through something similar, maybe better or maybe worse than what I've gone through. And this should make you aware of this whole new world that you might not know existed. These parents are going to come in and they're going to talk about their heroes. They're going to talk about their stories. And you're going to get to witness firsthand what we've gone through. Again, this is my story. This is my daughter's story. And this is who I am now. I decided to create this channel, to make this channel alongside with people that have helped me, my business partner that's helping me. I decided to make this channel to bring awareness. I'm not well at times. I'm not okay at times. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you I've gone over it because I'm never going to get over it. Never. But one thing I am going to do until my dying day is I'm going to talk about our heroes, spread awareness, and make sure that people hear our stories. Make sure that we are a voice for these children. Make sure that these children are talked about and remembered just as they need to be as heroes. If you've never been on an oncology floor, consider yourself blessed. But if you have, even to visit or to do something or help out or something, then you see these little heroes, and once you're there, it'll change your life forever. Once again, I just want to thank you for taking the time of hearing my story. Thank you for subscribing to the Gold Corner. Again, these are for children that are fighting any type of illnesses, but primarily cancer. I want to thank my coworkers, my family. I want to thank my employer, my work, the doctors I work with. I want to thank the Ronald McDonald House. In the book, I will be able to reach out and actually mention more people by name. I want to thank the Bearded Villains worldwide, especially all my Texas villains, and especially North Texas and my chapter, West Texas. Just thank everybody out there who has helped me along the way. Let's be a voice for these children. Let's be a voice for these heroes. And again, even having gone through what I've gone through and the battles that I go through every single day, it's not every other day or 2 or 3 times a week. Every day, it's a battle not to have my daughter next to me. But even then, I can sit here and say that God is good, that you should still have faith, because we will see our children again. And this time it's going to be forever. I'm not here to preach religion. I'm here to preach about a relationship with God. And I'm here to tell you that if you've gone through it, I love you, and that I'm here, and that you can always get to me on Facebook, on the webpage, on anywhere, and we'll be there to answer questions. I will leave there, when we upload the video, we will leave the links to where you can reach both myself and Caleb. And if you want to reach out to us and talk to us, when we upload these videos, we'll make it possible for you to interact with these other parents. And if you have any questions or anything that you want to ask or talk about, we'll be here. So again, once again, thank you very much for taking your time. Thank you very much for visiting the Gold Corner. Until next time.